In a fast-paced world, everything is expected of everyone. As an individual, you bear the responsibility of being primed, polished, and perfect. Being extraordinary is revered, whilst mediocrity is a plague forever to be reviled. Therefore, it is no surprise for the ideals of reality to bleed into fiction. The concept of a protagonist or a hero that embodies the sensational is considered the norm. Only in later years we have embraced the media portrayal of the humble, ordinary hero. Even so, the circumstances these protagonists have found themselves in are still often otherworldly in nature. But why do we expect it so? Well, it is, after all, fiction, and the boundaries to which one would shape a narrative is essentially limitless. We frequently hear of how life imitates art far more than art imitating life itself, because indeed there is reason behind it. How often does one truly see art embodying life? Not just life, but the uninteresting, yawn-inducing side of it. Readers of fiction would definitely vouch for me when I say that reading is enjoyable, not only as a form of education or broadening your perspectives, but also for escapism. But what if fiction diverts from its intended purpose? Instead of finding solace in reality, the reader finds themselves looking at it, no longer holding a rose-colored lens, but a mirror reflecting a modern horror, the mortifying ordeal of mundane existence. Here are the 3 books I have read at the start of June that just hit differently for how it subverted my expectations, not just within the characters, but the style and the story as well. First, we have Letters to a Young Poet by Rainer Maria Rilke. These letters resonated with me in the precise way how I wished it would, and reading this is one of the few instances when I can say that the book isn't long enough. I've read this during travel, and somehow that intensified how I absorbed the book. It was simply exquisite how it touches upon the matter of artistic struggles and embodying creativity within one's life. Inside these correspondences, Mr. Rainer Maria Rilke succinctly defines with personal yet universal wisdom what it means to be a young poet, whilst simultaneously answering these questions we have ourselves as artists. These questions are posed by Mr. Franz Capus, who at the time was a student at a military academy. Mr. Rilke was his literary idol, and it didn't take long before he sent him his first letter. The book comprises of 10 letters total, each of them posing a different question from Mr. Capus, which we can infer from Mr. Rilke's answers. These letters asks of us to go into ourselves and examine what bids you to write. To ask yourself in the night's quietest hour, must I write? Now, this also applies to the form of art you have dedicated yourself, and not just writing. Admit to yourself whether you would literally die should you be denied this liberty. If the answer is a resounding yes, then you must construct your life according to this necessity. Another very apt piece of wisdom Mr. Rilke offers is to seek out the depths of things to which irony could never reach. What this truly means is that in order to create art, it needs not only our dedication, but also genuine sincerity. This reminds me of Ethel Kane's Tumblr post regarding of how we are in an irony epidemic right now, which I absolutely agree with. As both consumers and creators of art, we must bring back this innate appreciation towards its development. And in order to do that, we must allow our verdicts to be their own quiet, untroubled development. Progress of this kind, especially in your own taste when it comes to art, is not forced nor accelerated. It simply takes time. But my favorite, perhaps, out of all of these letters is about living with one's questions. What it essentially means is to not uncover answers that are yet to be lived or realized. For now, one must live with the questions, and eventually, without knowing it, you will find them answered. Through this, we are taught to slowly recognize things, whatever they may be, in which something everlasting can be felt. Through a creative lens, we see that there is more to the mundane than meets the eye. We are our own artist, and the life we live has more than we are led to believe. In this day and age, everything remotely imaginative is wrung dry. Nothing seems to make a point or measure up to a certain degree of importance. But since reading Letters to a Young Poet, I have found a kind of solace within that uncertainty, as should everyone as well. Next, we have the most anticipated one yet, Stoner by John Williams. Part of what makes reading wonderful is that every novel is a different experience where you can ascribe yourself within each characters and the world they live in. Rarely do I come across a fiction novel that reads like an autobiography written by a real person. Stoner by John Williams made me realize just how much one's life can be lived and how little of it is seen by those around you. Reading this was a little sobering because of how much I resonated with the protagonist in an existentialist approach. The novel opens by introducing us to William Stoner. His story truly begins when he goes from living in the farm with his parents to studying at university. It was after he encountered a teacher seemingly misunderstood by his impressions of him that he developed his love for literature and later became devoted to teaching. Remember when I said that this book reads like an autobiography? Well, because it does, though not in a way that you would expect. Stoner leads through his own life as though at a lonely distance that is all too familiar to me in some way. This is a story of an unconventional hero who is unremarkable, but in a candid sense of the word. He is socially inept, and only a few colleagues whom he surrounds himself with is there with him. After literal love at first sight, Stoner marries, and almost as if it were expected, it did not seem to be a good decision either. From this, we get one of the most tragic lines of the book. Within a month, he knew that his marriage was a failure. Within a year, he stopped hoping that it would improve. Edith met Stoner at a time when she was at a cusp of breaking free from her sheltered yet humdrum upbringing. Her controlling and unpredictable contradictions make her a formidable antithesis to Stoner's stolid nature. Constantly bereaved but without reason, Stoner does his best to take care of Edith and their daughter Grace. His wife deliberately makes their lives miserable by forcing Grace into a certain lifestyle not fitting for her age, while Stoner tolerates these actions that are directed attacks towards him. The only respite he gets is his job inside the university. This was rather fitting, as a friend of his once said, "It is for us that the university exists. For the dispossessed of the world, not for the students, not for the selfless pursuit of knowledge, not for any of the reasons that you hear. We give out the reasons, and we let a few of the ordinary ones in, those that would do in the world. But that's just protective coloration, like the church in the Middle Ages, which didn't give a damn about the laity or even about God. We have our pretenses in order to survive. And we shall survive, because we have to." To a larger extent, Stoner is an academic novel that paints a picture of the shallow pettiness within a learned institution. It is a story that prides itself as being existentialist, with the protagonist having contradictory feelings and constantly questioning himself about his life's meaning. He thinks to himself, "What did you expect?" as he lies on his deathbed. This is the question that confronted me as a reader, from asking myself, in some way, is he heroic? To contemplate whether my own life would amount in such significance. It is easy for us, as the readers, to place judgment upon what could have gone differently. There were plot points within the novel where I'd found myself saying, "Oh no." Because looking back on it now, there really could have been some things that, if had been done correctly, would have changed everything. Despite being a novel that I truly enjoyed, sometimes I would understand why this would infuriate some readers who are used to the archetypical hero. I remember motivational quotes that go something like, "Who are you when no one's watching?" Or, "Would you watch your life? Would anyone if it were a movie?" These questions would often baffle me because, yes, most people lead exceptional lives, and sometimes I feel guilty that I am not. Reading this novel changed that perspective for me. Because of our superficial views and assumptions about other people's lives, we frequently forget that we hardly know someone's story. Yet, we place too much importance in it because we know so much about ourselves. My expectations were subverted. After reading the story, I gained a newfound appreciation for the beauty of the mundane and a strengthened respect for literature. And finally, we have Letters to Malena by Franz Kafka. I've been putting off reading this book for quite a long time, but I finally found the right opportunity. Although I thought it a brilliant book, I am aware that there are implications present in rating a piece of literature that is essentially taken from very real experiences. When Milena Jasenka, a Czech journalist and writer, asked Franz Kafka for permission to translate his short story, The Stoker, she would not just become Kafka's first translator, but also the recipient of passionate letters. The correspondence transforms into an all-consuming epistolary connection as the two people share their immense mutual empathy for one another. As one reads through these letters, it is recognizable that Milena's responses are lacking, for which they are presumably lost. There is also an ethical dilemma to be considered as the reader is faced and must treat something that is utterly personal, such as this, with kindred reverence. We are swept up in a rigorous push and pull dynamic between detachment and attachment. There are delicate expressions of desire to overcome the gap between them in an agonizing craving for closeness. Here is essentially one quote for that example. "I am so happy to breathe again with you, so near. It is impossible to understand how my breast could expand and contract enough to breathe this air. It is impossible to understand how you can be far away. I kept wanting to hear a different sentence than you did. This one, you're mine. And why that one in particular? It doesn't even mean love, just nearness and night." These letters reveal Kafka not just as an anxious and restless insomniac who is constantly on edge, but also as a humorous, caring, and playful human being who bestows his words with lovable sensitivity and care. Kafka expressed concern for Milena's work, health, friendship, and her equally difficult relationship with her father. Moreover, perhaps it isn't love when I say, "You are what I love most. You are the knife I turn inside myself. This is love." During the frantic phase of exchanging letters, Kafka and Milena met in person only twice. 4 days in Vienna in June 1920, and 1 day on the Austrian-Czech border in August 1920. The relationship was ended when Milena was unwilling to leave her husband to live with Kafka in Prague. He ended the relationship with the letters continuing but becoming less regular. Numerous passages recount on Kafka's fear, ranging far beyond the well-known fear of intimacy. Eventually, that fear and Milena's marriage at last came between them. It's unfair to laugh at the lead singer in the opera who sings an aria while lying on the stage, mortally wounded. We lie on the ground and sing for years. Perhaps the logical conclusion is that we're both married, you in Vienna, I to my fear in Prague. Reading this was an overwhelming experience. I admit that while this book as a whole was revealing in many respects, the letters mostly left me more mystified and curious about Kafka's life. I had to take my time to truly bask in the lyrical mess that are these letters to Milena. Reading even a fragment of a person's life is an indigestible experience because as a reader, you're going through it yourself. The mundane is an essence of existence. It is something we often take out of context, and its isolation, frankly, makes it even worse. We tell stories in order to live, yet painstakingly we pick out each fragment of imperfection unaware of what we destroy, ourselves. We frequently associate excitement with tumultuous brevity, but rarely do we consider that there is beauty in stillness. If anything, a mundane life can signify peace, comfort, and stability. Often the protagonist just has an ordinary life, and the struggles which we thought were menial probably took everything they've got just for them to overcome. We have so much going on in our lives, it can be a relief to witness humanity at its core. Thank you for watching, and see you on your next read.